This video will show how to create the following two small Visual Basic programs. First, creating a new Visual Basic file in an empty directory, implementing it with a trivial program, printing the classical phrase "Hello World" to the screen. Then the Hello World program will be replaced with another program which receives input argument from the command line and also receives keyboard input from the user. This video is part of at least one playlist showing how to do the above with different programming languages. There should be a link to that playlist in the description below. Prerequisites. You, the viewer of this video, are assumed to have some skills in at least some programming language. I will not explain basic concepts such as what is a variable or what is an array or what is a for loop. Even if you have never written source code with Visual Basic, you are assumed to be able to understand, for example, what this Visual Basic code below does. In this video, I am using Windows 10 and developer command prompt for Visual Studio 2019. Now I am showing which version of the Visual Basic compiler VBC I am using. The version is 3.11. Now I use the Windows command cd to navigate into an existing but empty directory called f:\dev, and I switch to the F partition by typing f:. The Windows command dir shows that the directory is empty, so I am starting from an empty directory. Now I create a new directory called vbnet with the Windows command md, and then I navigate into it with the Windows command cd. Then I start Visual Studio Code by typing code and a dot, which is the path to the current directory. Then I create a new file called arguments_inputs.vb in the new directory. The purpose of importing system.console is to avoid typing console before write or write line or read line, which I will soon use below. Now I create a Visual Basic module that I choose to call main module. In that module, I create a so-called main procedure with a string array as an argument. Here I implement it as a sub-procedure that does not return anything, but you can also implement the main procedure as a function that returns an integer. The initial implementation will only print "Hello World" to the screen from the main procedure. WriteLine, which is invoked here, is a so-called shared sub procedure in the class system.console that was imported at the top of the file. If you are familiar with programming in C# or Java, you can consider a static void method in C# and Java as corresponding to a shared sub-procedure in Visual Basic. Now I show with the Windows command dir that the Visual Basic file, the .vb file, has been created in the directory vbnet. The program is then compiled with the Visual Basic compiler VBC by specifying the name of the VB file as an argument. The command dir now shows that a new file has been created with the same name as the VB file, but with the suffix .exe. As you can see, the program shows "Hello World" when it is executed. Now I will replace the initial Hello World implementation with the program that will receive and print arguments from the command line. The program will also ask the user to enter a name, and will then print to the screen what the user typed. For this purpose, I have prepared some pseudocode that I will paste into the program, but in comments, because of course it would not be possible to execute. Then I will modify the code by changing it to Visual Basic code that can be executed. Now I am showing how the program arguments will be provided to the program when it is executed. The arguments are added after the name of the executable file and then a space between each argument. So here I show 3 arguments for the program. Any program arguments are available in the array argument that I named cmd_args. I will iterate that array with a for each loop. and I choose arg as the name of the element iterated. Inside the loop, the iterated program argument is printed to the screen by calling the procedure writeLine. The string is created as a so-called interpolated string, with a $sign prefix before the string and the variable name in the string within curly braces. Now I will implement the second part of the program, receiving input from the keyboard while the program is executed. The question, "What is your name?" is printed to the screen with the procedure write. Here I am using write instead of writeLine to not print a line break at the end, because I want the input prompt to appear on the same line. That input prompt will be displayed when executing the readLine function that I'm using here to read input from the keyboard into a variable called name. Then I print the variable name to the screen by using the procedure writeLine and the text hello as prefix. Again, I'm using so-called string interpolation with $sign as prefix before the string and then the variable name within curly braces. Now I compile the program in the same way as before with the compiler VBC and then the file name as an argument. Then I execute the program with 3 program arguments. As you can see, the program works as expected. So far, I have used the VBC compiler to compile one source code file into an executable .exe file. But now I will show how to create a .NET project that can be executed in another way. First, I am showing which version of .NET I have installed, and as you can see, it is version 5. Now I am using the command .NET new console to generate a new console project, which is a command line program without a visual interface. The flag name is used for specifying the project name and directory name. I am using the flag language to specify that I want to create a Visual Basic project instead of creating a C# or F# project. I could also use the flag framework to specify an explicit .NET version, but I will instead generate a project with the default version. That default version will become .NET 5, which I will later show in the project file with the file extension .bbproj. This command that I now executed generated a project in the VB_project directory, which is the name I chose with the flag --name. I am now navigating into that directory with the command cd VB_project. Then I execute that project with the command .NET run. The generated project prints hello world on the screen. Now I will replace the generated hello world program with the program I created earlier in this video. Therefore, I copy the source code in the file arguments_inputs.vb and paste it into the generated file program.vb in the project directory VB_project. To execute the program, I can now use the .NET run command instead of the name of the compiled .exe file. The program arguments are then provided in the same way as before, with a space between each argument. I can also show in the project file VB_project.vbproj that the version of target framework which was generated is 5.0. This became the default when I did not use the flag --framework when the project was generated. When I now execute the program with .NET run and some program arguments, you can see that it works exactly as before when I executed the .exe file that had been created by the compilation with the compiler VBC.